Hey guys, I'm here. Welcome back for another reaction to Heavy Spoilers breakdown of the latest episode of The Last of Us. If you haven't seen my reaction to this week's episode, go check that out. It was wild and filled with such spectacular moments and additions to the game. I did really love what they've done with it so far. It was it's tough to say what my favorite episode is right now because there's just so many great elements of each one that we've gotten. But there's some of my favorite moments in the show so far that we got to see in this episode. But guys, I'm sure there's plenty of things throughout this, and definitely some that I know for a fact, after the fact, I definitely missed during the episode, which we'll probably get to and touch on in this video. So with that said, let's go ahead and hop in. If you're not subscribed to Heavy Spoilers, man, I think he's got the best breakdowns for sure when it comes to this show. So let's go ahead and check this one out. Here we go.
Okay, so The Last of Us Episode 4 is now out, and throughout this video, we're going to be breaking down all the Easter eggs, hidden details, and game differences. This sees Joel and Ellie arriving in Kansas City to find it run by a new villain that didn't actually appear in the original game. Kathleen brings an extra dimension with her, and throughout this video, we're going to be going through everything that happens in the entry. As always, we will be saving game spoilers until the end of the video, so you don't have to worry about having clicked on the wrong one. By the way, I'm your host, Paul. Welcome back to the Heavy Spoilers Show. Now let's get into the breakdown. Now the entry starts off with Ellie aiming the gun that she got from Bill's at herself in a mirror. Instantly, I got a lot of vibes of Taxi Driver, with her now feeling like she's able to handle herself because of it. In the original game, Joel forbid her from having one initially, and the plot with Bill played out completely differently. There wasn't the stuff with Frank, and thus she couldn't just take one from his home. It's also important to bear in mind that in the episode, Joel says they're in Kansas City, whereas in the game it all goes down in Pittsburgh. We're not in Pittsburgh anymore, Dorothy, and when talking about the game or show, I'll use them in a chain.
Also, I didn't notice this. Well, I did, but I didn't think about it at all. Underworld, man. Underworld. Great movie. Imagine the world ending, and that may have been the last movie you saw. That or Matchstick Men. I would have been watching Underworld, man. Love that movie.
Changeably, but it also means that some of the landmarks of the cities are different. In the game, you constantly had the yellow bridge off in the background, and this acted as a waypoint for you to get to. Upon arriving in Pittsburgh, they went into the hotel that was at the start of episode 2, and they ended up being split up with Joel having to make his way through the basement. Eventually he emerged on the other side, but he was ambushed by a raider who then tried to drown him. This does somewhat get played up in this episode, with a guy in the store almost killing him, like what happened in the hotel. In both instances, Ellie saves his life, and after this, Joel started to trust her. He even gave her a rifle immediately after so that she could watch over him, and then once he'd completed this section, he then handed over the gun. Now the gun in the game was originally taken from a dead hunter, and it was purposely picked to be the same model as the one that Marlene used in order to show how the two were linked. The game developers modeled it after a Beretta 70 series lightweight pistol, but in the game it was just called a 71 Jaguar. Now we see this whole scene playing out in a gas station bathroom, and I love how they transformed the location to make it feel like it's ripped right out of the source material. Gas stations also appeared in the original Dawn of the Dead, and the group there had a way more tense encounter than the punishment Joel's subjected to. Now thematically, this is meant to reflect the ending of the episode in which we see Sam. Ellie is a child holding up a gun, and it seems like it's all shit. At the end, though, they're left with Sam pointing one at Joel, and we see how kids are kind of being stripped of their childhood. They've been brought into this world that might initially seem exciting and fun, but there's people after them around every corner. She ends up having to shoot someone, and I love how there's these three moments that all mirror each other. Now outside we see Joel siphoning petrol from a car, and it's possible that he picked up this tank and tube at Bill's house. In the game, Bill gave it directly to him, but obviously with him being dead last week, he probably grabbed it from the storage.
Yeah.
Here. What's this? You'd be amazed at how many cars still got gas in them. Appreciate it.
Joel has to stop regularly because petrol's pretty much turned into water over the past 20 years, and it explains why people aren't just driving around in cars all the time, except for those sky-high gas prices, eh? Am I right? It's topical, it's topical! Now whilst they wait, Ellie busts out something that comes directly.
That was one of my favorite lines in the whole thing, because it just touches on, and not even just the gas prices, you know, stuff like that, because that, while very relevant right now too, sure, Like, even when they're not, that's just such a, like, you have a full tank of gas, and like he's saying, on a full tank of gas, you could go, like, see all kinds of things. He's like, oh, well, what did you all go see? And it's like, most of the time, unless it was for a vacation, people rarely go anywhere. We're so much a slave to just the workings of our society, you know. A lot of the times, a lot of us just kind of stay in. You know, it's not the case for everybody. It's a little bit of a sweeping generalization, but it is like the case with most people, you know. It really hit hard because I'm like, I was thinking, you know, if I wanted to, I could just take up and go to Cedar Point or Virginia Beach or something like that, you know, on a tank of gas, and it's just like, well, 2 tanks of gas technically if I wanted to go that far, but get the point. Like, we could just get up and go most of the time, but how able or likely are we? Sometimes we're just like, I just don't feel like it. We take that for granted. It's such a beautiful way to just show like how she looks back on the world versus the things that we can't do anymore. This show that we as a society kind of take for granted. Like, even going back to episode 3, the opening of episode 3 with the crashed plane. You know, she's like, you guys got to go in the sky. You know, she's amazed by all of these things that we used to be able to do, like the games we got to play. You know, we got to fly in the sky like birds. We could have gone anywhere we wanted to. These things that are just awe-inspiring to a kid growing up in this world that we just kind of take as, you know, whatever, as part of our daily lives because it's available to us right now. Just imagine, like, what that is for other people. It's just like it's a privilege check in a kind of way. I don't know. It definitely made me want to be like, oh man, I need to just take some more trips. I need to take advantage of what we got right now.
From the game.
Anyway.
This is no pun intended, volume 2, with the 2 spelled like a TLOU. It's a good joke. And it, as I said, it's ripped right out of the game. And even some of the puns we get in the entry are verbatim to what they are on the PlayStation counterpart.
I completely forgot about this book. I'm not going to lie. 100%. Forgot about it because the only thing I remember like extremely is the comic book collecting, you know, and that she was into those. I completely forgot this book existed.
No pun intended. Volume 2 by Will Livingston.
It's a joke book. No pun intended. Volume 2 by Will Livingston.
It doesn't matter how much you push the envelope, it'll still be stationary.
It doesn't matter how much you push the envelope, it'll still be stationary.
What did the mermaid wear to her math class?
What did the mermaid wear to her math class?
What?
An algebra.
An algebra. Algebra.
Dude, I love puns,
I stayed
man.
up all night wondering where the sun went. Then it dawned on me.
I stayed up all night wondering where the sun went. And then it dawned on me.
Now, we will talk later on about how she got this in our super spoiler section, as it is foreshadowing an episode that will probably get down the line. It first appeared in the Alone and Forsaken chapter, which took place in Pittsburgh, and this episode's basically adapting that storyline. Alone and Forsaken is also the name of the Hank Williams song that they play in his car, and this too appeared in the game as they rode into the town. I actually did a trailer breakdown a while back that pointed this out, but then the estate of Hank Williams claimed it and blocked the video, so no Hanks, I won't be using it here. I like the way I slowly grind my viewers down with the worst puns imaginable. We see Joel holding back a smile. Slowly, he is warming to Ellie, and at this point, they've been together for a couple of weeks. Like the game, she busts out jokes from it at several key parts of the episode in which they go to sleep. Ever since the death of Sarah, Joel spent his life around adults, and Ellie doing this very much reminds him of how much light his daughter brought into his life. He has been completely cold to kids, and didn't even flinch when throwing the body of one into a fire. He carried this in the same way that he carried Sarah, but it was completely unemotional for him, and now just a part of life. However, Ellie very much brings with her the possibility of regaining the happiness that he lost, and this is why he becomes so protective over her. When they sleep, he always puts himself facing the danger and stacked in front of her, because subconsciously he won't let anything bad happen to her no matter what. We discover that the cars on the road have been shifted out of the way by modified vehicles that were fitted with plows sitting on the front. This is very much foreshadowing the run truck, which too appeared in the game. It chased you throughout Pittsburgh and was constantly pinning you down with gunfire as you made your way throughout the city.
God, that section was so annoying.
And the dialogue here is all pulled right out of the game.
Except for one thing.
Sir, Light on the reading, but it has some interesting pictures.
No.
Photos.
Light on the reading, but it's got some interesting photos.
That's the difference.
Ellie, that ain't for kids. Step back, that's not for kids.
How do you even walk around with that thing?
Please get rid of it.
Who's your horses? I want to see what all the fuss is about. Whoa! How the hell would he even walk around with that thing?
Get rid of that.
Use your horses. I want to see what all the fuss is about.
Why are all these pages stuck together?
Oh, why are these all stuck together? I'm just fucking with you.
I'm just fucking with you.
Bye-bye, dude.
Now, as they make their way out on the road,
I love
we see
that scene
abandoned
so
cars
much.
and theme parks, which of course show the fall of humanity.
Yeah.
However, we also catch a field of buffalo, and I think symbolically this has been chosen for a reason. The fall of humanity hasn't doomed the rest of nature, and throughout the game we see how it thrived in our absence. Bison were actually almost hunted to extinction during the Wild West, and I think this animal specifically shows how the world's moving on without us. At this point, they pass through a town in a bridge. Though it's not the same as the one in Pittsburgh, I think this has been chosen because it resembles it, and they want to give a little nod to the game.
I'm sure
As
that
you
could
make
be
your way through
anywhere,
the
but like
city, you have
it
this
looks so
constantly
much
off in
like
the background, and the yellow
Point
beams
Place
on it
to me.
acted as a guide that would lead you out
Point
of
Place,
danger.
Point
Now, we see
Pleasant.
several boats in the river that have all capsized, and it's almost like a graveyard with everything falling into disrepair. Everything is a monument, almost like a fossil, showing what's come and what's now extinct. We pass a FedEx depot that's full of trucks and military vehicles lining up the road. It showcases how everything and everyone was affected, and how the entire world came to a standstill that's now frozen in place. There's a great highway shot where we see a collapsed train in the background. I love how every landmark they pass has its own story that's likely a horrifying moment in someone else's life.
And there was a section in part 2 where you had to navigate through a train station containing several collapsed trains, which this could be a nod to. The map navigation as well was also something that popped up in the games. When hitting open world areas, you'd often use maps to navigate them, and this ties in with the more subtle nods to the games that we've seen throughout the episodes. We've had the workbenches, magazines that have upgrade branches in them, and Joel even slumped his backpack off his shoulders, similar to what he does in the game when he's crafting. When
We still
discussing
haven't
this on
seen
the
a shiv,
HBO
though.
podcast, the creative team said that they actually wanted every episode to open with a window that hinted to what would be happening in the entry.
That would be great.
Instead of the skip intro button, they'd also have it say press play, tying it in further with the games. Now,
I
we
would've
also
liked
see
that.
as they pass the sign for Arby's, which
But I
is a
see
nice
how
little
most
nod
people
to this
might
line
not.
from last week.
If I feed you, then every bum you talk to about it is going to show up here looking for a free lunch. And this is not an Arby's.
Now, in a brand new scene for the story, we see as they go off-road and park up in a forest. In the game, they continued on the road to Pittsburgh, and after Ellie fell asleep, you woke up arriving at the town. When discussing this in the HBO podcast, the creative team said that in the game, you're very much just constantly pushing forward, but because you're playing and they want to keep you involved. However, a TV show can take breaks and show us the nights and days that just wouldn't happen in a game. This is most notably seen in episode 2, where they bunkered down in Boston. In the game, you pushed on through the night after leaving the QZ, and due to it being an episode, they can do things like this instead of constantly trying to keep you playing. Like cowboys in the Wild West, they eat food out of metallic plates, and these were made of tin back in the olden days, which meant they could be washed quickly. They feast on 20-year-old ravioli from Bill's Supplies, and Ellie asks if they can light up a fire for the night. Joel says no initially, and she suspects it's because the infected will see the smoke. The infected didn't really perceive things like smoke as being related to humans, and even lights themselves weren't something that they considered to mean there were people in the area. During the game, you can wander around with your flashlight on because they just didn't perceive that as being linked to a person. Joel says that people are the real danger out here, and this is the first real point in the season when we get the idea that humans are even more dangerous than the infected.
Yep.
Raiders and slavers were mentioned in episode 1, and though we saw some in Lincoln, they weren't things Joel and Ellie experienced. This is different in the game, and at this point you'd face stuff against Fedra and Robert's men. However, I didn't even realize until now that it wasn't until Pittsburgh that you actually encountered humans that weren't acting in the QZ. There were some that would enslave people, and others that would do even worse. Ellie at this point also has her bag out, and we can see the little Cyclops head that she also had in the game. Anyway, they bunker down for the night, with Ellie once more trying to read from the puns book.
Why did the Scarecrow get an award?
Why did the Scarecrow get a promotion?
All right. Because he was outstanding in his field.
You dick!
Because he was outstanding in his field.
That'll do. Put that thing away.
Joel actually laughs for what I think is the first time since Sarah's death, and though he reassures them that they're safe, he looks in the forest before turning to his gun. Joel can't rest, and we then catch him standing guard in the night, looking out into the darkness.
Yeah.
It's a very eerie moment filled with fear and paranoia, and the fact that Joel is so wary over what could happen is because he's done some horrible things. He alludes to this later on after the ambush, and we'll go into what this actually means. Now, this is how he knew it was a trap, and why he's also afraid of what could happen here. Anyway, Ellie looks out in the stars, and in the game, this could be linking in with something that I'll talk about more later on. I keep dangling that carrot to make you stay till the end of the video, but there are very interesting points here that I think definitely are worth discussing. Now, in the morning, we see Joel is making coffee, and there were several points in the game where he's talking about how much he loved it.
Oh yeah, that's true.
All the time. Just coffee. Oh, I really miss coffee.
This happened during the hotel bit, and we later learn he traded a lot of his supplies for a bag of beans. In the second game, Ellie remarked that she thought it tasted like burnt shit, and that line sort of gets brought across here.
Yeah.
Thank you. Acquired taste, my ass.
It smells like burnt shit.
Joel and Ellie talk about where Tommy could be, and they bring up Cody. This is located in Wyoming, and it's a location that they mentioned before when discussing where Tommy is. We actually learn a bit about him that we weren't privy to in the game, and it explains the Desert Storm sticker that we saw in the first episode. We touched upon this during that, but the reason that Tommy got so high up in the Fireflies was because he was a skilled soldier. We discover that he joined a group making their way to Boston, and Joel went along with him in order to try and keep him alive. Yeah, they met Tess, and the HBO podcast for the show filled in some of her backstory that we haven't really been privy to. We discovered that Tess had a husband and son, and when the outbreak happened, she ended up killing the former. She couldn't bring herself to do the latter though, so she ended up locking him in the basement. Much in the same way that Ellie was a representation of Sarah for Joel, she was also one for Tess, but the scene explaining this was unfortunately scrapped.
Yeah.
Now, Joel is clearly opening up to her.
That means like her kid is just scratching away somewhere in that basement still.
As he's lowering his walls, and it's a complete 180 from last week when he refused to tell her anything.
Matter of fact, we just keep our histories to ourselves. Matter of fact, we can just keep our histories to ourselves.
At this point, Tommy joined the Fireflies after meeting Marlene. Joel says that he quit, and we'll talk about what happened to him in the super spoiler section. Now, Joel says that he's only taking Ellie because he made a promise to Tess and that she's cargo. This is what he also refers to her being in the game, and she wonders why he even bothers living if he doesn't have attachments or anything that he actually cares about. You do kind of wonder why Joel keeps going when he doesn't really have anything to live for, but in the game he says you find something that constantly keeps you pushing to survive. It's also at this point that I notice Bella Ramsey has a cut in her eyebrow, and this is the same one as Ellie has in the game. You also get a scene that pulls directly from it with Ellie falling asleep on the road.
Yeah.
You got up pretty early if you want to grab more sleep.
I'm not even tired.
You try to get some sleep.
I'm not even tired.
So fucking
When making their way
adorable,
to
man.
Kansas, they're faced with the same issue that they had in the game. On Outbreak Day, many people tried to flee the area, and because of this, highways became backed up. What sucks is that in the show, he can see through the tunnel to the other side, but unfortunately, they can't get through it. In the game, he stops and says screw it before taking a turn to the right, and this leads them directly into an ambush. This is likely why the road was shut up in the first place, as that's what I always thought when I was playing the game. As they drive through the city,
Which makes me wonder if he realized, because that's a weird position for that truck to be in if it just kind of happened to crash that way. Likely, but... and also, the past that he later alludes to, maybe he recognized it as what it was, and that's why he's like, screw it, because he's like, we have to go into the trap. Like, he's, which is why I think he's expecting this the whole way going through. But maybe that's just me. Maybe it's just as simple as it was just a normal roadblock. But Yeah, I feel like that was a manufactured roadblock, and he recognized that, but knew that he had no other choice but to, set off the trap and hope they can make it through it.
You can also catch a theater playing Underworld and Matchstick Men, which were both released in 2003. You also pass a pile of burnt corpses, and in the game, after surviving the ambush, you got to the other side and found something similar to this.
Yep.
This let you know it could have easily been you, and it's a harrowing sight to see that I think even has a child amongst them. To make matters worse, Fedra have been overthrown, and the checkpoint gate is now wide open. This is probably a good thing though, I think, as Ellie likely would have been scanned and then shot for being infected. Anyway, at this point we get the ambush playing out, and let's play these together so you can see how the scenes compare.
Easy.
Please!
Holy shit.
Help! Hey! Please help!
Are we gonna help him?
Put your seatbelt on, Ellie. Put your seatbelt on.
Well, what about the guy?
He ain't even hurt.
Are we gonna help him?
It's pretty spot on. Aside from that.
Whereas in the game they were rammed off the road by a bus, in the show their tires are popped and they end up crashing into a laundromat. They use similar shots with the cameraman filming from behind them, and we watch them drive directly into the crash point. Now, this was one of the most tensest scenes in the game, and they just immediately dropped you into the action without giving you time to breathe. Sometimes games will be like, cool mate, cutscene's over, and then they'll put you in a bit, which is exactly what happened here when you were playing it. Joel almost got his face shoved into some broken glass, and you had to fight to survive as hunters swarmed the area. In the episode, Ellie hides in a hole in the wall, and Joel takes out the raiders that close in. We can see he's carrying his rifle from the PlayStation Classic, and this is called a Mossberg 500. They really managed to recapture what it's like being stuck in these gunfights, and you constantly have to shoot and move as the enemy AI would have them constantly bearing down on you.
Yeah.
At this point, a guy busts in to take Joel out, and he almost kills him. He's saved by Ellie, who shoots the bandit, and like I said earlier, this is riffing on the scene from the hotel. They framed it in the same way, with the raider being on top pinning Joel down, and Ellie ends up coming behind him. In the game, it was sort of a Deus Ex Machina, as we didn't know Ellie was there, but here we see things from her point of view. We also sort of get an extended scene in which the guy doesn't die and he begs for his life. Again, moments like this appeared in the source material, and when you beat a person badly enough, they'd sometimes plead for you to let them go.
Whoa, man, let's be cool, man. Take it easy.
No, it's okay. It's okay. It's over. We're not fighting anymore.
Look, man, we can work something out, okay?
We can trade with you guys. We can be friends. I didn't know.
The guy here, Brian, begs not to be killed, and though Ellie doesn't deliver the final blow, Joel does. During this bit, Brian brought up his mother, and we did kind of go back and forth in the heavy spoilers office about who exactly this was. There was potential it could be Kathleen, and that's kind of what we debated over, but she doesn't seem that upset later on. She seems more focused on having a reason to arm people against the traitors, and she uses his death as a way to do this.
Yeah.
They push your desk in front of a door to block it, and this is something you'd often do in the game to stop the infected and hunters from following you. And we see trucks patrolling the street, calling out for Brian, and this is riffing on moments in the game when he killed someone and their crew would call out for them.
Todd! Zach!
Wes!
Cole!
It's Mateo! He's dead!
Spoiler alert.
First introduced in part 2, this added a lot of depth to the combat, and it was one of the key features that they pushed when promoting the game. They even went back and added it into the Part 1 remake, as hearing people call out for someone you just killed makes it all the more personal. Cut across to some soldiers who've made makeshift uniforms out of Fedra body armor and helmets, and we're now with some rebels. Here we meet Kathleen for the first time, and we catch her interrogating a man that we learn is a doctor. This band of rebels has just taken over the QZ recently, and they've outed Fedra in order to replace them. In the game, you pretty much got the idea early on that Fedra were very bad, but when you traveled to places that had stomped them out, you saw the rebels were even worse. They have a sign up saying that those in detention still have basic human rights, but Kathleen doesn't offer any of these to the Doctor. She ends up murdering him, and this is her basically showing a no-tolerance policy for people that lie to her. Played by Melanie Lynskey, you might recognize her from Yellow Jackets, and even though she's small and reserved, she dominates the scene she's in. Now we discover that her brother was interrogated by Fedra at some point, and that they ended up killing him. Being the leader of the rebels, this likely pushed her over the edge, and it's what forced them to overthrow Fedra and their fascist ways. This entire interrogation is in order for her to find Henry and Sam, who we get a brief glimpse of at the end of the episode. In the super spoiler section, we'll be going through who this is, and it's clear there were some people like the Doctor who were working with Fedra. They were probably playing both sides of the fence, and the Doctor would of course be very valuable in this new world due to so few people having medical qualifications. He says that he was threatened by Fedra, and this is of course murdering Kathleen here, showing how power can corrupt no matter who's in charge. My guess is that the Doctor was some kind of informant or something, and he snitched to Fedra in order to get certain benefits. Henry seems to have been as well, and from the off...
It also gave off some very, like, World War II vibes, too, like selling out your neighbor and stuff like that, and then not worrying about what happens to them until you're in that same situation yourself. And yeah, I like that parallels as well, because it kind of also informs on the whole Fedra stance, but then again, now they're the ones kind of doing it right back, so it adds a couple of different layers to it.
I can gather he was the one who told Fedra about her brother, which led to them murdering him. He feels secure with a gun to his head and says that because he's a doctor that she won't kill him. We'll also talk later about why this line is really important and how Kathleen may be a reflection of another character. Now at this point she hears horns blaring outside and sees Brian dead on the ground. There is a cut in his chest, and it's likely that Joel stabbed him with the knife that Brian tried to give him so that he'd let him go. Makes me wonder if the knife could pop up again, and Kathleen may possibly find it on Joel and put 2 and 2 together. She blames Henry for this, assuming that he's found a radio and called Joel and Ellie in, which makes him an even bigger target. Kathleen initially wants to use the Doctor to save one of their lives, but after hearing he's got no chance, she mercilessly shoots him in cold blood. Joel has very much inadvertently started a war, and this attack now allows her to arm everyone up in order to go and search for them. Even the killing of a Doctor will likely be overlooked now because she has a reason to pin blame on him, and people will forgive her because of how bad things have gotten. Throughout the HBO podcast, the creative team have talked about how love is a big theme in the show, and this can be seen in every single aspect. Ranges from Joel and Sarah, Frank and Bill, Joel and Ellie, and Joel and Tess. It shows both the positives and negative sides, with us often landing in the latter camp. When you love someone and they're taken from you, it can cause you to be angry and vengeful, which is very much represented in Kathleen. She's angry over her brother's death and willing to kill anyone who could have had a hand in it. The trucks travel out and we see graffiti on them saying, "We the people." These are the first 3 words in the Constitution, and their use here signifies the new order they've brought in. They very much try to form a new state, but whether that's good or bad is another question entirely.
We the people might also be another nod to Taxi Driver, as the campaign slogan in that was "We are the people."
Now we also see the run truck, and this pulls directly from the game, in which it plagued you at several points. There was an automatic gun on the top of it that would constantly bear down on you, and you had to sneak your way through the streets, avoiding detection at all costs. As they drive through the streets, we can also make out the words "F*** Fedra" in red spray paint on the back. The soldiers storm the building and homes looking for the fugitives. Joel and Ellie lie low in the high-low bar, and we see newspapers covering the windows. We can see the Kansas City Star and a headline about a US troop hunt entering its 3rd day. As Joel sits down, we see him moving his hand almost like he's stretching it out, and it still bears the cut on his knuckles from smashing that guy's face in like it was the like button. Smash the like button, I said! And the conversation here plays out slightly different to how it does in the game, with Joel basically trying to comfort Ellie. He says that she shouldn't have to shoot people because she's just a kid, and in the game, he's just very matter-of-fact about it.
And just so we're clear about back there, it was either him or me.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry.
Here, though, he apologizes that she was put in that position, but she says it wasn't the first time that she had to kill someone. He hands her the gun back and shows her how to use it, which mirrors the moment in which he gives her it in the game.
How about something A little more your size. It's for emergencies only.
Okay.
Show me your grid.
Ellie was desperate to get a gun at the start of episode 2, and though she's finally happy to get one, we know the weight of the need for this outweighs the fun.
Yeah.
Joel says to put it in her pack, otherwise she'll
Shoot your damn ass off.
but she ignores this and puts it in her pocket.
Yeah.
She might end up pulling this out later on, and it could be how they get out of the situation with Henry and Sam next week. Across town, the search continues with them discovering where the pair had been hiding. It's very similar to what Anne Frank had to do during the Second World War, and this attic room above an office could be a nod to that. Judging by the time of the beans on the floor, Sam and Henry were possibly there for a couple of weeks, and we see drawings that Sam has made. This is him and his brother as superheroes with orange masks over their eyes. When we see Henry at the end, he has orange face paint on like this, which carries across from this moment. Now, though the rebels overthrew Fedra, that doesn't mean that they have control of the city. In a back room, we see there's a crater in the ground, and this starts to move up and down. As we know, the infected moved underground, and the fungus spread out like telephone wires. This ran for miles, and allowed the infected to build a hive mind network. This is far more dangerous than Henry and his little brother, but Kathleen's so focused on getting revenge, she doesn't want to deal with it.
Yeah.
They sweep it under the rug, but this has the potential to actually bring the whole city down, and my guess is they're gonna regret doing this. Now that night, Joel and Ellie sneak into a skyscraper.
Are we going to
and
touch
in
on
classic
Perry at
Last
all?
of Us fashion, he gives her a bunk up into a vent so that she can unlock the door. This happened throughout the game at several points with her smaller size allowing her to open up sealed areas. Now in order to be safe, they climb up as many steps as they can, and along the way we get this line ripped right out of the game.
Yeah.
Hey, you know that guy who said he was hurt? How did you know it was an ambush?
How did you know
Know what?
about the ambush?
I've been on both sides. I've been on both sides.
So, kill a lot of innocent people? We'll take that as a yes.
Take it however you want. It was a long time ago. We did what we needed to survive.
You and Tess?
And the people we were with.
It really shows the duplicity in Joel and how far he fell after losing Sarah. He was so set on surviving, he didn't care what he had to do to make it through the day, and it makes you wonder what went on in those 20 years. It's something we've never really been privy to in the game, and I honestly, I don't know if we should ever see it. Joel is very...
Because Tommy, actually, I'm going to hold that comment just because I don't see why we would talk about this here yet when we haven't gotten to that point. So I'm going to save this for later, but it kind of ties back into this. I don't want to say anything ahead of where we are, at least. Whatever.
Presented to us as a hero, but there's always this dark side within him that sets up some of the acts he commits. You're always wondering if there's more to the father figure from Texas, and it adds so much to his character just having this shadow side to him. Now, they make it 32 floors before they duck into an office. The fact that Sam and Henry randomly end up on the same one signifies to me that it wasn't random at all. I actually think that the pair followed them up there, and it's possible they'd been tracking them for some time. Joel lays some glass on the ground so that he can hear if anyone sneaks up on them. This is a trick I learned from Tom Cruise when watching Mission Impossible. It doesn't end up working, and this clearly links to the deafness that we get touched upon here. He said he couldn't hear Brian sneaking up on him, and this is also how Henry and Sam are able to sneak up on them. Ellie asks if it's because he was shot, and in episode 3 he talked about the scar beside his temple. This was where a bullet cut him, and it's possible that this was caused by a soldier who fired at him and Sarah. He immediately changes the conversation and ends up turning back on the other side, possibly because the question's hitting a little too close to home. Now he sleeps with his right side covered, and this also explains why he chose his position in the forest. He knows that his hearing's off and has to account for it. When he's awakened later, he's on the other side with his left ear covered, explaining why they were able to sneak up on them.
Didn't notice that.
Juxtaposing the campfire scene from earlier, this scene is much darker, with Joel asking about her having to kill people. Eventually, though, she does make a joke from the book to lighten the mood, and this goes...
Did you know diarrhea is hereditary?
Diarrhea is hereditary. It runs in your genes.
It runs in your genes.
Anyway, they fall asleep laughing, but...
I like that moment, too, because we talked about this. I did like a little after show podcast earlier with Akasan Busy and JVS over on their channel, over on JVS's channel. And that's one thing that I brought up was that, you know, we've been seeing them kind of flirt with kind of weakening each other's walls. And that was the first time he asked a question out of curiosity. Him wanting to get to know her. You know, I like that.
But the mood is quickly changed with Joel waking up to find Ellie being held at gunpoint and Sam standing over him with one drawn. That takes us into a super spoiler section. So if you haven't played the game and don't want things ruined, then I recommend that you turn off now. Now, first things first, what we have to talk about is, of course, Sam and Henry. As you can probably...
All right, we got this far, and he hasn't touched on it at all. The guy that plays her right hand, Perry, is played by, Jeffrey Pierce, I think is his name? The voice actor who played Tommy in the game. I never knew what he looked like in real life, so, I didn't realize that at all during the reaction. It's just one of those little nuggets that, I found out after the fact. I was like, God damn it, why did I not know this?
I guess from the Kathleen comments, they are wanted people, and they want to get out of the city just as much as Joel and Ellie do. Because of that, there's going to be a team up, and they'll no doubt have to work together to make it past Kathleen. All the stuff involving her and them is made up for the show, and in the game they were survivors from Hartford that entered Pittsburgh in order to get supplies. The military had abandoned the zone, and Henry and Sam suspected that the place would end up with a power dynamic like Pittsburgh, where kids were killed off because they slowed down others. Thus, they headed out looking for another quarantine zone, which is when they passed through Pittsburgh. At this point, they were attacked by hunters, and the group they were in ended up being separated. They'd agreed to rendezvous at a radio tower on the outskirts of the city, and this is the location they all end up heading towards. Now in the game, as you were navigating Pittsburgh, you jumped into a room through a window, and at this point, Henry ended up grabbing you. Initially, he thought you were a hunter, but he did start to question things when Ellie attacked him. Joel almost killed him, but his brother Sam pulled a gun on the pair, setting up a similar scene to what we end with here. Now in the game, it was Henry and Sam that were the ones hiding out, like Joel and Ellie here. They took you to an abandoned office building, but they turned it into a hideout, and you waited out throughout the night before heading out. I'm guessing that will be what happens in episode 5, with a group now trying to escape this city. Now, as for the other Easter eggs in the entry, we have the no pun intended book making a big appearance. This was actually given to Ellie by Riley, and in the Left Behind DLC, she read it at several points. I'm guessing that she'll be the one to give it to Ellie in the show, as we are set to have a flashback episode with her. Now, when Ellie was gazing up at the stars, I was also wondering if this was foreshadowing the space scene that happens in part 2. In that, Joel takes Ellie to a museum for her birthday, and they climb into a shuttle, which is when he gives her some headphones to listen to an Apollo liftoff. Wearing an astronaut's helmet, she imagines what it's like going up there, and I was wondering if this scene here was setting up that down the line. Now, another thing they bring up is how Tommy is in Cody.
Because it's not just that in part 2. There's also dialogue later in the game, too, that also talks about her desire to be an astronaut.
Actually in Jackson in the game, and this is about a 5-hour drive from Cody. Now, as for Kathleen murdering a doctor, I did think this could potentially also be foreshadowing Joel doing it down the line. Doctors are very valuable in this new world because so few people have the skills to be one. Thus, killing one is damning a lot of people's lives that they could have saved. Kathleen does this, and Joel does this too in order to stop Ellie from being operated on. Just something I noticed, and how the characters both did it out of anger. Killing the doctor also has dire repercussions for Joel as well, which at this point, I'm pretty sure will be happening in Season 2. I know there's still people out there who think the show isn't going to do the Mario Golf scene, but hate to break it to you, mate, they're being very game accurate here, so I think they probably are. Now, the last spoilery Easter egg happens with the recess in the floor. Now, if you listen closely, you can actually hear the sound of a bloater. This teases at them popping up in the future, and potentially we might get to see one next week. These highly infected monsters threw acidic spores at you, and they were actually teased in episode 2.
Yep.
So there aren't super infected that explode fungus spores on you?
Shit, I hope not.
Obviously, Kathleen and co, they shouldn't have left this unchecked, and that tiny little door, it's not going to hold the bloater back. So fingers crossed that we get it next week. And as for this episode, I think this was another great one that perfectly managed to adapt the game
man,
whilst changing some things to make it more like TV. Unfortunately, I don't think we're ever getting to the hotel now, as we're way past that point, but the human drama has been enough to keep me hooked. I think this was probably, I'm going to be controversial, I think this was probably my least favourite of the 4 so far, but it's difficult to really judge it for that because, you know, the other one set such a high bar. This also feels like it's a 2-parter, so you can't really judge it on that because they
it's also the shortest episode we've got so far.
I can't wait to see how it plays out either way.
So,
and
I get it.
I'd love to hear your thoughts on it, so make sure you drop them below. We are in competition right now, giving away 3 copies of Wakanda Forever on the 15th of February.
Go check out the channel. Go sign up. See if you can win that Blu-ray. But yeah, man. I love every episode we've got so far, man. I really do. But yeah, I love the breakdowns, man. I love the show. I love this game. I haven't had time to play it, so I've been watching it again and again and again on YouTube to get things seared into my head a little bit. But like, I love what's going on. I love how I love the changes that they're making, the truncations that they've made. I mean, like, I get the need to, and I understand like the infatuation, and I feel it myself at times. These set pieces that we've missed out on, like the hotel, the skyscraper, the school from Bill's section, but that's not the focus. The gameplay is there to keep the player engaged. The show is here to keep the audience engaged. So, you know, you got to kind of truncate things together. You also have limited time, limited budget compared to the game. So I get what they're doing. I like how they've combined certain set pieces and scenes together to kind of make an amalgamation to still get the same idea across, like the situation where they crashed the truck and how they combined that with the scene from the hotel that we didn't have. I don't know. They're doing a really good job at like blending everything together. And I'm very curious to see the bloater come up. I mean, I kind of wish they didn't show it in the trailers. And I saw that it's also in the trailer for next week's episode. I mean, anybody that's played the game or has paid attention at all, I feel like that's obvious what's coming from that. So, I mean, hopefully you're not here and not expecting anything like that down the road, at least by this point. But, like, I love what they've done, how they've gotten this across, and I just love what they're doing, man. I think they're doing a fantastic job with this adaptation, man. I don't remember. I can't remember if there was something else I was going to say. I think that's it. But guys, what did you think of the breakdown? Was there any details that were missed that you guys caught? Are there any interpretations that you guys have that may be different from what we got here? Sound off the comments. Let me know your thoughts down below. We'll carry on the conversation after the video. Check out my reactions if you haven't already. Check out Heavy Spoilers. Subscribe to them if you haven't already. And if you enjoyed this reaction, leave a like, drop a comment. But before we go, I want to shout out our channel legends: Benny Share, Ryan Karen, Jason Coleman, Philly Vane, Yorick, Corey Scott, Margaret Grace, Melito, Robert Anguiano, Raven McGann, Jeffrey Hale, M. Sephiroth, Jake Cantrell, Amy Becca, and Josh Lee. Thank you guys so much for your continued support. And that's it for this video, guys. I'll see you all in the next one. Take care, everybody.